So this is the brand new Xiaomi 13 Pro, and I've been using it for about 3.5 weeks. And just before this video, I wiped the phone down, not because of that, you sick perverts, but because it's constantly collecting fingerprints. Xiaomi has decided to put ceramic for its backing. And look, it feels great, it looks great when it's clean, and it just feels very premium. But the problem is, because it's a black color, very glossy, it just collects fingerprints very easily. Like, I can be 10 kilometers away from the phone and just look at it and a fingerprint will form. Now, granted, most of you out there are probably gonna be rocking a case, so it doesn't matter. It's only for those 1.5% crazy maniacs out there who are gonna be rocking this phone without one. Now, this is a big device, and I'm gonna be making a lot of comparisons to the iPhone 14 Pro Max to give you guys some context, because I feel like the price point of this, 1,099 euros, puts it in direct line of sight of a Galaxy S23 Plus, and of course the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's a heavy phone, not as heavy as the 14 Pro Max, but heavy enough. In fact, the overall design happens to be a bit taller than the Pro Max, but the Pro Max is obviously wider. It's a skinnier phone, which means it just feels a bit more comfortable to hold in the hand. And because it doesn't have those squared off edges that the iPhone has, when it's in your palm, it just feels easier to hold. Now, I still don't think this is the right direction, because once you unlock the display and you start using the device, those curved edges kind of get in the way. You guys know how I feel about it. Curved edges don't belong on phones. I know they look nicer, and that's great to look at, but from a typing experience, it hinders how fast I can type, and even little things, because this is a bigger phone. Like, if I'm swiping to the right-hand side, I find I get a lot more missed touches on the Xiaomi phone compared to a device that has a flat screen. Now, the most unique thing about this device is obviously the camera sensor. Like, we have a 1-inch camera sensor. That's huge, which means it's gonna act better in low light because it can allow more light in, and you're gonna get a bit more bokeh when you're taking shots up close to you. Now, to give you an idea how it looks compared to the iPhone, the camera sensor is obviously pretty big on the Pro Max, but look how much bigger it is on the Xiaomi device. On top of that, it just sticks out a lot. Like, if you're one of those guys who use their phones on the table, like, you're gonna get a lot of wobble compared to the Pro Max. Now, for me personally, I don't care about wobble. I don't use my phone on the table. It just feels weird. I like to pick it up and use it with one hand, but there's definitely a lot of space between the back of the device and obviously the surface that you place it on. One thing I do like, though, is this display. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's a 6.73-inch AMOLED display, 1 to 120 hertz, so it has a high refresh adaptive display, so it can sip on lower refresh rates if you're not doing much, and then it can ramp up if you're scrolling or playing a game. In fact, I think a lot of gamers who use mobile phones to play games will find this phone very interesting, because the performance on this is actually very respectable. I know Samsung has a custom Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip for Galaxy. Well, this one happens to be faster in terms of multi-core speeds. It's only single-core clock speeds that the Ultra tends to win out. But honestly, hardware today is so good, it really comes down to the software experience on the phone. And look, I don't like MIUI 14. You know, it's not terrible, but it's definitely on the lower end of the list of my favorite themes. I don't know, like, okay, look, I know you're trying to be a little bit like Apple by having 2 swiping zones at the top. Like, if I swipe on the left, I get the notifications. If I swipe on the right, you get quick settings or the control center on an iPhone, for example. But I'm just so used to on Android swiping directly down once or twice to either get quick settings or my notification list. I just don't like this. On top of that, the icons just feel a bit more chunkier and bigger. I know I can tweak this in the settings. Obviously, there's a lot of themes you can choose from. Like, I'm using a Google theme from the MIUI store, so it looks a little bit different. But compared to, let's say, the Pixel or even One UI, this definitely falls short. I've also heard a lot of complaints of duplicative apps. For some reason on my device, there's not a lot. Like, there is a Mi browser and there's a few Mi specific apps that pertain to the Mi ecosystem, which is fine. Like, I get it. Xiaomi wants you to be in the ecosystem and use other devices that they sell. But I've heard in other regions, there's like 3 browsers, 29 phone dialers, an extra wife. You get an extra wife if you buy the phone. Like, there's just so many duplicative apps in some situations that it could add a lot of bloatware. Now, granted, this is Android, you can get rid of them, which is great, but you know, someone coming to a Xiaomi phone for the very first time, it could feel a bit overwhelming. All right, so right now you're looking at the front-facing cameras of the Xiaomi 13 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. iPhone can do 4K 30. Xiaomi is stuck at 1080p 30. There's no 4K option on the phone. Obviously, you guys let me know which one sounds better, and most importantly, which one actually looks better. Now, one thing I absolutely love that they're doing is they're still including a charger in the box, you know, and not just any ordinary charger. We're talking about a 120 watt charger that can top up this phone very quickly. Plus, they're not sacrificing wireless charging like you'd find on a OnePlus 11. You also get 50 watts wireless charging, which is way faster than what, the 15 or 25 that you can suck out of an iPhone 14 Pro. So for those of you out there that need to top up their devices quickly, this is gonna do it so much faster. But then it comes down to the battery itself. And like, this is a pretty big battery. What is it, around 4,900 milliamp hours? Obviously bigger than what you get with the Pro Max, but because the software and everything is vertically integrated, the battery life is still way superior on the iPhone. With the Xiaomi phone, the 13 Pro, I'm like averaging 5 hours of screen on time before needing a charge. It's enough to get me through the entire day, but it's not enough to take me into 2. Now I decided to switch themes mid-video. Most of them are free, which is great. So if you don't like the look of what MIUI 14 offers, you can switch it around a bit to feel a bit more fresh. But look, star of the show is the camera. This is mostly camera than phone. And it's a very, very specific partnership between Leica. And even though the lenses are created by Sony, it's using 3 50 megapixel sensors. Telephoto, ultra wide and wide are all 50 megapixels. And I think they did a great job with the camera. Do I like it better than the iPhone? In some ways it's better, and in some ways it's not. If you're talking about the front facing camera, it tends to, again, make my skin look a bit yellow. And I also notice that the highlights on my forehead are completely blown out, whereas the iPhone did a better job of exposing the picture correctly. I will say though that the iPhone does tend to make things look a bit too HDR, which can be a bit aggressive in certain situations, but if I had to choose between the two, I think the iPhone still looks better. When it comes to actual daylight photos, there's 2 different modes you can utilize on the Xiaomi device. There's a Leica Vibrant, which is what is set to default, but there's also a Leica Authentic. Vibrant obviously does what you think it does. It makes the pictures look a bit more bright. Authentic tends to remove that vibrancy and give you more of a natural look. I still personally prefer the vibrant look because it's still not as vibrant as what I see on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It's a bit more realistic, should I say, but they kind of work in different ways. I found that the iPhone 14 Pro Max was very aggressive with the blacks and contrast. So you'd get a lot of deep dark shadows, whereas the Xiaomi 13 Pro tended to lift the shadows, so you saw more information in there, but sometimes it would cause the photo to look very flat. And that was kind of a bummer. And if we're talking about like the wide lens, I didn't find the wide lens on the Xiaomi phone to be that great. I found it to be more consistent on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But like when I'm talking about these things, it's not like a huge difference to the point where I feel like this camera is bad. These are just minor things. Like you might prefer the look of the Xiaomi pictures over the Pro Max, because there's times where Xiaomi just did a better job. But then there's other times where the iPhone 14 Pro Max just offers a better visual look. When it comes to nighttime photography, I found again the 13 Pro did a better job of exposing the scene, but again, it's lifting up the blacks, right? So you are losing some information, especially in photos where there's a lot of pavement and ground. It ends up looking very smooth. As for video, 4K video does look better on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The colors are more punchy, the video is smoother. It just gives you an overall visual impression. But you know, the Xiaomi 13 Pro looks very good as well. Again, just like some of the photos it takes, it tended to make the scene look a bit more flat compared to the iPhone. Now, both of these devices can shoot a stabilized video. So the iPhone can shoot it at what, 2.8K at 30 frames per second, whereas the Xiaomi 13 Pro tops out at 1080p, 30 frames per second. Look, there's a lot to like about the Xiaomi 13 Pro. It has a great camera, fantastic performance, fast charging, beautiful build, but I don't love it. You know, I still think the S23 Ultra is a better phone. I personally feel like the Pro Max is a better phone, but if you can get this on a good deal, I think a lot of people will be very happy with the results that come out of this device. The camera is its own unique experience. I do love the fact that you just get much better bokeh from the 13 Pro compared to other devices, but I still think Xiaomi is falling a little bit short compared to the other contenders on the market. Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next one.